Hello again, dear friend. It is me, Josh Bloom. I know it seems like you heard from me moments ago, and I can understand feeling that way because I sent you an hour-plus long reading of my 9,000-word writing about the new Spike Lee movie Highest to Lowest and its inspiration, Akira Kurosawa's 1963 film High and Low. And you're probably still getting through it, or better yet, you are listening on repeat, right? If not, it's in your podcast feed right now, and it's a doozy. I even listened back to it myself and was entertained by my own work. There's nothing wrong with that unless your work involves degrading humanity. My work only involves degrading myself, and I don't go too far, so don't worry about it. I am here at the Black Cow in Croton, New York, the black-owned, gay-friendly, queer and trans-employing and supporting coffee shop. I wanted to tell them that I have been referring to the shop this way on my podcast, but I thought I might flub the description and say the black, friendly, queer, coffee, trans, gay, supporting, employing, shop coffee, or something like that, which would be embarrassing, inaccurate, and just plain old weird. So hopefully someone there is listening and can know, without me saying so, that I adore the inclusive and welcoming atmosphere now and always. I even have a Black Cow Coffee Company ball cap and wrote a 10-second song about their milk selection, which has changed since then, but I blame the economy for that, and therefore I blame the leader of the Trump administration. I also blame the leader of the Trump administration for initially making getting a COVID booster confusing, but next week, I will be doing that and getting a flu shot too, since as I told you on the previous episode, I was fighting the attempt of a cold to take over my life. I have beaten it, no jinx. I drowned it with water, but it is trying to stick around anyway. I would say I am at about 87%, and that is better than how I usually feel when I get a fully blown out cold and hold my breath as I wish for death, just like the character James Hetfield sings about in the Metallica song One. I hope you enjoyed the first edition of Josh Bloom's Right on Time Recaps, the film review series that runs right when you're ready to read. Today, we are back in ignoring the Trump administration mode, kind of like that solo song New York Groove by Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley, except way more disgusting and corrupt. And when I am saying that in comparison to Knights in Satan's Service, well, that's really saying something. Now that you have had a few days to read and or listen to my piece about Spike Lee and Akira Kurosawa entitled Dads Pick on Their Recently Kidnapped Kids in an Akira Kurosawa classic and its relit Spike Lee joint, I want to remind you that the Come With Me to See full-length video about going to see the Spike Lee film and the days and weeks that passed while writing the piece, which contains quite a bit of commentary about Egg McMuffins, including some shocking new developments that I recorded just yesterday, is now being edited and will post to YouTube very soon. I think of these separate but complementary pieces, written, spoken, and shot, as a box set of sorts, a deluxe edition, if you will. When I am looking back while creating this work, I find the common threads and I am fascinated. I began to edit the Come With Me to See video and found myself laughing out loud. Not surprising for a guy who listens to his own podcast, right? I am looking forward to sharing it with you. Please subscribe to my Substack at superjews.substack.com. Follow the Josh Bloom Podcast on your favorite podcast app, and visit and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Superjews to be notified when this work goes live. I will be diving into my box set for The Goonies next. I mentioned previously that there is a tangential connection between The Goonies and my upcoming book. The Goonies stars Sean Astin, and Sean Astin also stars in the Lord of the Rings films, and Sean Astin's co-star in the Lord of the Rings films is Elijah Wood, and Elijah Wood figures into my book. The reason Elijah Wood figures into my book is that he blew some of his fuck you Frodo money running a record label for a few years, and one of the bands he released is the subject of my book. You should be able to figure it out now with a simple Google search. The book was announced this week, and I will talk in depth about it on the next episode of the podcast, and by talk in depth, I mean beg for pre-orders. By the way, since I was fighting a cold and not looking to make a theater full of other people fight a cold, I did not go to the Jacob Burns Film Center this past weekend to see the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio called One Battle After Another. But I will be doing just that tomorrow, so expect the rollout of Josh Bloom's Right on Time recap about One Battle After Another sometime in 2026. Just kidding. I am pretty sure it won't take that long. I am still deciding how I will use my remaining movie passes. The upcoming Timothée Chalamet film, Marty Supreme, directed by Josh Safdie, is quite likely. The logline is, in the 1950s, young Marty Mauser pursues his dream of becoming a champion table tennis player. One of my heroes, Penn Jillette of Penn & Teller, is in it too. I'll keep you posted. Since I was so conscientious by not risking making any of my fellow moviegoers sick, why not congratulate me and reward this selfless behavior? There is no buy Josh Bloom a coffee because he is one of America's and possibly the world's most wonderful men who stands up for people by understanding how unpleasant it is to be sick and therefore stays home when he has a cold, unlike the human garbage who only care about themselves and put no thought whatsoever into coughing and breathing all over anyone sitting next to them in a movie theater website. But there is a website that is more generally called Buy Me a Coffee, and for only $3, you can reward me by buying me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. Only $3 to send the message that you support and are proud of me for keeping my germs to myself. This is episode number 51 of the Josh Bloom is not advocating for alternative medicine when he states that he drowned his cold in water, because there is no motivating or driving philosophy behind this action. Rather, it is simply a matter of deciding not to deaden cold symptoms with pain relievers and other remedies, because honestly, it is easier to drink water, hydrate, and rest than it is to go to the CVS and buy the same crap that will just rot in a drawer until you have to buy it again podcast. Also known as the Josh Bloom Podcast. It is the latest edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, days 243 through 249. This week on the show, on day 243, I pick up where I left off on day 242. I was still thinking about Jimmy Kimmel being kicked off the air. I had been waiting for Howard Stern to get back from break to hear what he had to say about it, since he and Jimmy are close friends. Then I began thinking about Howard's co-host, Robin Quivers, and how she is one of the reasons I revere black women as much as I do. Please remember that Kamala Harris lost the election by only a little more than 1% of the vote, and that the leader of the Trump administration didn't even get 50%. please remember. On day 244, I bring up 4 ways to extend your life that are pretty easy to do. No spoilers, but I will reveal that one of them is about ridding your life of toxic people like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, for example. He is a person, like many people, who seem to thrive on making the lives of others difficult and miserable. We cannot and should not waste our time on Earth attempting to fix what will always be broken. On day 245, the leader of the Trump administration reminds me of Charlie Brown crying good grief when he tells a group of gathered reporters in the Oval Office that they should not be allowed to criticize him and that criticizing him should be illegal. Get ready to say goodbye to free speech? Maybe. He asserts that 97% of coverage about him is negative, without realizing it is because 97% of what he does and says is negative. On day 246, I report on the return of Howard Stern to the air for the first time since Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. I don't watch Jimmy, and Howard has refrained from political content this year, but he and Jimmy are besties, so I knew he would speak about this. I was also reminded of Howard's own troubles with the FCC throughout his career. He is a pro at being taken off the air. On day 247, I start out with some baby talk to illustrate the toddler-like reaction of the leader of the Trump administration when, during a humiliating visit to the United Nations, an escalator stopped working, which made the leader of the Trump administration very, very upset. Later, his teleprompter wasn't working correctly either, which made him Lady Goo Goo Gaga. Apparently, he is now launching an investigation into why the escalator stopped working. On day 248, I admit to being embarrassed and humiliated by the behavior of the leader of the Trump administration because I am a human being, which means I too am capable of despicable behavior, and like most people who aren't total freaks, I choose to regulate it. Only the worst of us stoop to petty expressions of sadness, misery, and vindictiveness. Tom is the only acceptable petty expression. On day 249, you can clearly hear that I have begun my cold fighting journey, but this does not stop me from showing up to celebrate the completion of 17% of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I liken the invasion of my body by this cold to the invasion of the country by the Trump administration, and remind us all that just like how Lisa Left Eye Lopez of TLC says about waterfalls, we must openly embrace water. Hydration solves so much. Just another reminder to please make sure to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. We are closing in on 2 million views. I post my extended Come With Me to See videos there, and you can also check out my series like 10-second songs, affirmations for the miserable, songs that don't respect my boundaries, and misunderstood lyrics, along with all of the original daily TikTok posts of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration that this podcast is made from. Follow me on all of my social media at superjews.com. That's superjews.com, or IamJoshBloom.com. Thanks for listening, and now let's get into 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Just so you know, I am finishing up writing this at home at my kitchen table. They say in politics that people care about kitchen table issues, and let me tell you, I have kitchen table issues. I am getting in the mood for 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration by listening to the live stream of liberal debater Dean Withers on YouTube. I mentioned this kid before. I was an early adopter who started watching his debates in early 2024 when he would draw maybe 1,000 viewers at max. On the day of the political violence a couple of weeks ago, he had over 250,000 people at one point. This dude is a savant, highly skilled and highly intelligent. Let's see what kind of mood I'm in when I get back after listening to him talk to dum-dums. Day 243 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I have never done a part 2 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, but I am still thinking about Jimmy Kimmel. I said yesterday I don't watch Jimmy, but Jimmy has a relationship with a host I have paid attention to since I was 17 years old. And that host is Howard Stern. Now, Howard is a person that I look up to more than I looked up to my own goddamn father. I began doing transcendental meditation 12 years ago because of Howard. I have not laughed more in my life because of one single person more than because of Howard. And I have been lucky to get an education since I was a teenager from the perspective of a Black woman named Robin Quivers because of Howard. Robin is one of the reasons that I revere Black women as much as I do, and she is a reason I believe that Black women should be running this nation. Last time around, we came pretty goddamn close. Every time the leader of the Trump administration tries to say that he won in a landslide, when the fact of the matter is he barely won by 1% and didn't even get 50% of the vote, it pisses me off. Jimmy and Howard happen to be very close friends, so I am sure that Jimmy has called Howard by now to get his take on what happened. As I said, I don't think Jimmy should have said jack shit about anything related to what happened in Utah. I know what he said and why he said it, but it didn't serve a purpose, and it wasn't even funny, so why bother? Howard, who has been famous throughout his career for going after people who go after him, has not said anything overtly political in my recent memory. Yes, he interviewed Joe Biden. Yes, he interviewed Kamala Harris. Yes, he jokes about how he is called woke. That's about it. The reason Howard doesn't go political is not because he's afraid of being fired. He wouldn't give a shit anyway. He just wants to sit in his basement and play chess and paint and play guitar. The reason he doesn't bring it up is because the whole show would become a political show, and that's not why people like me have tuned in for almost 40 years. It would be depressing because right now, politics isn't funny. South Park, on the other hand, please continue to go scorched earth. It is what we demand, and it is what we expect. This has been part 2 of the Jimmy Kimmel situation. Signing off. Please ignore the Trump administration. Day 244, 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. There are 4 ways that you can extend your life, and they are pretty simple to do. 1 is not consuming alcohol. 2 is not smoking. 3 is not compromising sleep for other activities. 4 is not associating with toxic people. That 4th recommendation has to do with the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. If you are a supporter and follower of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, you are associating with toxic people. The leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration are people who spend their public life trying to make other people's lives miserable. Why do they do that? Because they get off on that. It is fulfilling to them. The reason that the leader of the Trump administration did not allow anyone in his current administration to be anything but a loyalist is because it is important to maintain and never question this pattern of behavior that may have arisen from a childhood devoid of affection, encouragement, and praise.
I don't know exactly what went on behind the doors of the Trump household when he was a boy, but I can guarantee it may or may not have been some form of what I just described. This is how the American people became stuck in a situation where we have to deal with the trauma of the leader of the Trump administration and the blind loyalists he has gathered around him who are also suffering in similar ways. They call themselves the Trump administration. If we do not consume alcohol, if we do not smoke, if we do not compromise our sleep, if we stop associating with toxic people, then we will extend our lives. I need to listen to the song Asleep by the Smiths more often because compromising sleep is my personal problem. I do not drink or smoke or associate with toxic people. Imagine the possibility of gaining that kind of liberation by simply ignoring the Trump administration. Day 245 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. This week, the leader of the Trump administration says that he believes that it should be illegal to criticize him. He reminds me of crying Charlie Brown, except I actually feel bad for Charlie Brown. Specifically, the leader of the Trump administration believes that 97% of coverage about him is negative, and that should be illegal. Now, perhaps he has not considered that so much coverage of him is negative because he is a negative person who does negative things that should be covered negatively. I don't remember all of the fawning coverage for Charles Manson, although I suppose that the leader of the Trump administration did not send his followers to hurt people. Oh, wait a minute. Anyway, I am contemplating his assertion that it should be illegal to criticize him, not for the obvious reason that asserting such a thing is against the First Amendment to the Constitution guaranteeing free speech. I am contemplating it because it makes me think about his psychology and how wounded and hurt he must be to be so disliked while he is simply statistically a very popular person, considering the fact that he has tens of millions of loyal followers who would walk off a cliff for him. But on that same token, he is statistically very likely the most unpopular person on the planet. So it is no surprise that his wounded ego, wounded heart, and wounded soul desperately wants to find a way to halt the criticism that hurts him so deeply. Unfortunately, even if the criticism ceases in public, the criticism will never cease in private. Some people would like to receive criticism because it gives them an opportunity to grow and to change. But if you are a person like the leader of the Trump administration, and most likely the members of the Trump administration who have no interest in growing and changing and actually see criticism as a threat to the wall that such a person builds around themselves, then you do look to try to deepen your delusion by keeping anyone who might criticize you from doing so. I get it. I understand. But that does not mean that I accept his lack of self-examination, and so I must ignore the Trump administration. Day 246 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Howard Stern was back on the air today for the first time since Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. And as I figured, yes, he and Jimmy did talk. Howard reminded us that he has been through this with the FCC himself because back in the 90s, the parent company he worked for was pressured by the FCC to fire Howard for what he was saying on the air. Howard talked about how his boss at the time would not back down to the government and would not fire him. It was a long battle, and Howard was scared. He had a young family at the time. He didn't know what was going to happen, but his boss assured him, I am not firing you, and this is wrong, and they persevered. Howard doesn't get political very much anymore, but I knew he would say something today because he and Jimmy are very close friends. It would be a glaring omission if he did not. He went on to say this morning that enough is enough, that universities, law firms, broadcast networks, all of these organizations that are being pressured by the government to try to get them to bend to their will must fight back. And Howard said the best way to fight back is the way people are fighting back, which is to speak with their pocketbook. And he said on his show today that he is canceling his Disney Plus subscription. I think I should remind you that if you are a Beatles fan, the Beatles have a new multi-day special where they are releasing the remastered versions of the Beatles anthology documentaries on Disney Plus this Thanksgiving. And I'm sure Disney is expecting a lot of people to subscribe during that time to watch the Beatles. I was going to at least find a new email address for a trial subscription. I wasn't going to pay for it, but I'm not even doing that now. And people who can pay for it are unlikely to pay for it if they are protesting Disney. Late today, ABC announced Jimmy Kimmel was coming back tomorrow. Doesn't matter. The message needs to continue to be sent regardless. I am proud of Howard for standing by his friend. Just remember, this has happened before. It can happen again. No more capitulation. Ignore the Trump administration. Day 247 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. Goo goo gaga. If you don't know what goo goo gaga means, it has nothing to do with queer icon and iconic queen Lady Gaga. Goo goo gaga is what people say when they're referencing how a baby talks. I don't like to use 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration to criticize the leader of the Trump administration in a purely derogatory way, but today is a day where I have to use baby talk. Goo goo gaga. Today, the leader of the Trump administration was embarrassing the United States overseas at the United Nations when he and the lady of the leader of the Trump administration, aka Melania, went to use the escalator. The escalator suddenly stopped. This made the leader of the Trump administration very, very upset. Goo goo gaga. Then later, when he was giving a speech in which he told all of the gathered nations that their countries were going to hell, another goo goo gaga moment happened. Apparently, the leader of the Trump administration's teleprompter wasn't working correctly, which made the leader of the Trump administration very, very upset again when he was already upset from earlier. As it turns out, a member of the entourage of the leader of the Trump administration accidentally pressed the stop button on the escalator. You've been on an escalator, right? You know that there's an emergency stop button. For some reason, it was accidentally pressed by a member of the entourage of the leader of the Trump administration. The teleprompter, as you may have guessed, was also being operated by a member of the entourage of the leader of the Trump administration. So as you see, these two examples of the leader of the Trump administration turning into a 79-year-old big baby were both caused by incompetent people with the leader of the Trump administration. Hey, At least it is times like these that affirm that followers of the leader of the Trump administration really do support children. Personally, I believe this particular child is suffering from cuts to the Department of Education, which ironically were caused by the Trump administration. Day 248 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I am embarrassed. I am humiliated. The leader of the Trump administration has created a presidential walk of fame in the White House, which is surprising because it is unlike him to positively acknowledge the existence of prior presidents, much less that they were famous. But what is not surprising is that instead of a photograph of Joe Biden, he has included a picture of an auto pen because the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration have made the claim that Joe Biden was incapacitated and was signing executive orders with an auto pen, something that the leader of the Trump administration has also used, although he claims it was only for unimportant papers. Maybe birthday cards, perhaps. The auto pen use is not the issue because we know that the leader of the Trump administration has no fidelity to the truth because his fidelity is to saying whatever he has to say or wants to say in order to meet his ends at the time. The issue is the picture in and of itself because it is so embarrassing and it is so humiliating. But maybe not for the reasons that some people might find it embarrassing and humiliating. I was thinking about this and trying to understand for myself why those are the only words I could think of and why I chose them. I don't care what other countries think of the United States. It's not something in my universe of concern moment to moment. I certainly don't care what other people in other countries think of me personally for being an American. I voted for Kamala. The reason it embarrasses me and humiliates me is that it is embarrassing and humiliating to be a human, knowing that people can behave this way, can be so sad, can be so miserable, can be so vindictive that they stoop to the most petty expressions of that sadness, misery, and vindictiveness. It means we are all able to sink that low if we allow ourselves. The only acceptable petty expression is Tom Petty. Knowing that about myself and about human beings in general, knowing that we're capable of being that pathetic is embarrassing. It is humiliating because we walk around with that contained in us. It is a reminder to not sink that low. It is a reminder we should always be striving to be better. It is a reminder that we have a morally bankrupt person leading the nation. It is a reminder to ignore the Trump administration. Day 249 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. I am sick. You can hear it in my voice. I have a cold, or more specifically, a cold is attempting to have me. I am fighting off a cold, but does that mean that I am not here to celebrate what is to be celebrated? That is, we are now, as of today, on day 249, 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, 17%. Yes, 17% through the final term of the leader of the Trump administration. No, it does not stop me. When I feel a cold coming on, which often happens as the seasons change, I douse it with water. I am like the dearly departed arsonist, Lisa Left Eye Lopez, chasing waterfalls. I have found that drinking tons of water is the most effective way for me to stop a cold, because a cold, like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, is an attempted invasion in my life, and I put it out like a fire. It is an unwanted presence that tries to debilitate me, that tries to keep me down, that tries to hold me back from what I am trying to accomplish. And so, this cold that I am valiantly fighting off, even though you can hear it in my voice, it will not do that to me. Just like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration will not do that to me. As this cold tries to invade my body, I press that emergency stop button just as if it were a moving escalator. You know what the hell I'm talking about. But seriously, when we have these milestones like 17% of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, I remind myself and you of the main message here. The main message is to pay less attention to the constant incoming news information that only destabilizes us, only undermines our mindfulness, undermines our optimism, and undermines our hope. Use that regained time, use your reclaimed mind to put love into the world and into the lives of the people you care about, including yourself. Do not allow colds to invade your body, and do not allow the words and deeds of corrupt leaders to invade your life. Douse yourself like a lawn in need of irrigation, and ignore the Trump administration.
Hey, it's Josh. How do I sound now? Not as sick, right? I drowned that cold. 17% isn't bad, right? We're going to be fine. And even if we're not fine, that's fine, as long as we are living life to the fullest all the time. Since we had a week off while you were listening to the podcast about Spike Lee and Akira Kurosawa, I am happy to let you know that next week's edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration is already done. I did something new this past week that was fun. I responded to several commenters because I just couldn't take it anymore. I hope to have this next episode out early. Thanks again for listening. Please leave a 5-star rating for the Josh Bloom podcast in your podcast app and leave a comment saying that you like the show. Don't forget to follow. And have you ever thought about what would happen if you told a friend about the show? Visualize it. Imagine what your friend would feel like about you if they knew that you were thinking about them and the idea of giving them the gift of knowledge about the Josh Bloom podcast. When I think about it, I can only see the upside. I can't wait for your friend to hear the show and for your friend to go to buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. Lastly, visit me everywhere for everything by going to superjews.com. That's superjews.com for links to all of my social media, and visit superjews.substack.com to subscribe to my Substack, which contains all of my long-form writing. Subscriptions are free, or for a small monthly donation, you can support my work. It helps a lot. Thanks again for listening. I will see you next week.